United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres says he spoke with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba and stressed to them that there is no alternative to diplomacy.
Worried by the heightened tensions and increased speculation about a potential military conflict in Europe. The price in human suffering, destruction and damage to European and global security is too high to contemplate. We simply cannot accept even the possibility of such a disastrous confrontation. I will remain fully engaged in the hours and days to come. I just spoke this morning with the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation and of Ukraine. And my message is clear. There is no alternative to diplomacy. All issues, including the most intractable, can and must be addressed and resolved through diplomatic frameworks. It is my firm belief that this principle will prevail.
And for the latest, we can cross live to our Ice correspondent Phillip Crowther, who is in Kyiv. Philip, Russia's defense minister says some Russian troops are returning back to their bases after completing drills. What's the latest there, and what can we read into this particular move?
Look, this is seen very much as a little glimmer of hope, a little bit of good news after tensions have been ratcheting up between Russia and NATO, including the United States, of course, between Russia and Ukraine, of course, as well. We've heard since that announcement that some troops were returning to their bases from the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, but also from his spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov. And let me give you some of what he said just a very short while ago, that Russia has conducted and will continue to conduct these kinds of exercises within its borders. That is something that Russia has said throughout this standoff, is that they have the right to conduct these military exercises with Belarus, for example, on the border here with Ukraine, just about 75 kilometers away to the north here is that border between Ukraine and Belarus. Peskov also saying this, that the fact that these troops are returning to their bases is a, quote, normal process. There is no novelty here, says the Russian Foreign Ministry's spokesperson. So maybe that little bit of a glimmer of hope, that sigh of relief maybe that we were hearing here in Kyiv and maybe in other European capitals as well, well, maybe it's a little bit too early. We'll how the day evolves and who else we will be hearing from on the diplomatic front before the end of today. What we don't have from the Russian side are any details as to where these troops were and which bases they are returning to, how many, just a short announcement from the Russian Defense Ministry and some video of some Russian troops moving away from areas closer to the Ukrainian border, it would appear. All of this according to the Russian Defense Ministry, so there's still a lot of information to gather over the next few hours.
And it seems there's still great concern about a possible invasion, though. The U.S., in fact, is closing its embassy in Kyiv, where you are. What's been the reaction so far from the West to these announcements by Russia?
Look, you're right to mention the fact that U.S. diplomats are on their way out. The embassy is on its way out of Kyiv as well, moving to the west of the country, to Lviv, which is considered a safer place in case of a Russian invasion, and also a place simply closer to the Polish border for a possible escape for foreigners still in Ukraine right now, and possibly for Ukrainians as well. All of this, of course, in case of an invasion, which is, of course, not happening right now. Remember that Russia has said throughout this whole diplomatic wrangling and this tense standoff that it does not want to invade Ukraine. It's always worth hearing that other side of the story. Russia has said all this time that it can have military drills and that it does not want to invade Ukraine. All of this while Western officials, especially from the United States, have been saying that an invasion by Russia into Ukraine could be imminent. Now, what's the reaction to this? Well, there is that sigh of relief, a little bit of a glimmer of hope, because there hasn't been one for a long time. The only thing that we've known is that all parties seem to be open to further talks. That includes Russian President Vladimir Putin. That includes the likes of US President Joe Biden, French President Emmanuel Macron, very important in all of these diplomatic wranglings, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky here in Kyiv also saying that he would like to have further talks, of course. But there is skepticism here from Kyiv, from the Ukrainian capital. We heard from the Ukrainian Foreign Minister Kuleba today. He says essentially, I'm paraphrasing here, that what he's hearing from the Russians, he will only believe it, and that Ukraine will only believe it once they actually see troops depart from the border between Russia and Ukraine. Just a reminder that there are approximately 130,000 Russian troops near the borders with Ukraine, those being the Russian borders with Ukraine, but also the border of Belarus with Ukraine, where some of those major military drills are happening right now, in fact.
In the meantime, Philip, there's still much diplomatic activity going on. Can you bring us up to speed here?
Well, look no further than Moscow for that, because the Russian President Vladimir Putin is, of course, the one who's going to decide and presumably also made that decision for some of those troops to return to their respective bases. He is meeting the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz today in Moscow after the German Chancellor had been here in Kiev just yesterday. This is the kind of shuttle diplomacy, as it is called, that we've seen from several heads of state or heads of government here in Europe. The French President Emmanuel Macron did the same thing last week, starting off doing those two capitals as well, Kiev and Moscow, in short succession to try and convey a message somehow. Someone might be able to become the mediator between these two parties. There isn't one right now. The French President was possibly one. Turkish President Erdogan might also have been interested in having that role and getting Ukrainians and Russians to the same table. That is not happening right now. In Moscow also today, and this is where we heard from the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, he's actually meeting the Polish Foreign Minister. That is important as well, because Poland, France and Germany have been among the most important countries to essentially compare notes and get to a common agreement as to how they can somehow de-escalate these tensions between Russia and Ukraine. So there is plenty happening on the diplomatic front, and there has always been this openness from all sides, this willingness from all sides to keep on talking. But do always remember this, that the demands that Russia has, they have not been answered in a positive way by NATO. And a reminder of what those are. First of all, Russia does not want Ukraine to ever enter NATO, something that has been rejected by the transatlantic alliance and by the United States. Also, Russia wants any NATO troops and any weapons essentially away from the borders with Russia, out of Eastern Europe. All of that rejected also by NATO. So there is still very much a standoff here between Russia and the West, essentially, and that has not been solved.
All right, Philip, that has not been solved, but against this news of some Russian troops returning to their barracks, there are still large-scale operations going on. And when we look at it both on land and sea, Ukraine's president has declared tomorrow a day of unity. Tell us about this.
Yeah, there's a reason why that is happening, or will it actually happen? We'll have to wait and see whether the Ukrainian people actually do what their president wants them to do. That is to put flags out in the Ukrainian blue and yellow colors on their balconies wherever they can and sing the national anthem. That is the request from Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. Again, we'll have to wait and see whether the people actually follow that, because he's not the most popular president right now. Now, the reason why he chose that date as the important one is because there has been a lot of speculation as to when exactly Russia might want to invade Ukraine, again with that caveat that Russia has repeatedly said it does not want to do so. The speculation being that it could be this Wednesday, and that is why Ukraine wants to put up this show of force, in a sense, or a show of solidarity rather, amongst its people. Volodymyr Zelensky is somebody who has downplayed the fears somewhat of an imminent Russian invasion. The Ukrainian government has been critical of the United States for being a little bit too alarmist in the past over an imminent Russian invasion. And that is a tone that we've been hearing again and again, and still we are today and yesterday from the Ukrainian government and indeed from the Ukrainian president, that there is no reason to panic despite the fact that so many European embassies have sent all of their diplomats home, that so many European countries and Western countries have told their citizens to leave Ukraine as quickly as possible. It's an alarming scenario, but the Ukrainian authorities still telling their people to go to do as they usually would and to stay absolutely calm.
Well, we'd like to thank you for giving us that update. Arise News correspondent Phillip Crowther, live from Kyiv.